What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning into the channel. Shane here, bringing you another early game showcase for a build in Elden Ring. This build is definitely focused on beginner players that requires next to no setup. If you want something quick, simple, and effective, then this is going to be a build that is perfect for you. This is our early game Paladin build, and it is pretty strong. But the reason why it's pretty strong is not only because the build itself is simple and effective, but also requires no setup. Everything that you're going to be using in this build is found in the initial hours of the game in Limgrave or the Weeping Peninsula, and just requires to turn your brain off. You really don't need to think too hard. We're going to be using the heavy mace, which is going to increase our strength scaling. You can get this in the round table hold, but the skill that we're going to be using is Endure. This is the bread and butter of this entire build, which you can also get in Limgrave from the War Master's Shack. If you're unfamiliar with what Endure actually does, it essentially increases your poise for a couple seconds. It grants you like 2-second buff, which is going to increase your poise. Poise essentially is your resistance to being interrupted by an enemy's attack. So the more poise you have, the less likely you are going to be knocked out or stunned. Every attack in the game, has a poise, set damage to your poise. So the more you have of it, the harder it is to get interrupted. But what Endure does is just pumps that to ridiculous levels and essentially grants you hyper armor, which makes you invulnerable to not all attacks, but many attacks in the game, including boss attacks, so you won't get knocked out. But in addition to that, it also decreases the damage taken. So it's a win-win in that situation. It allows you to face tank bosses. It feels like you're cheating. It feels like a cheat code. It's really that insane. And I don't know why I've ever really used it in a build before. It's so much fun to just go head to head with a boss and just absolutely just knock off not only their attacks damage-wise, but also just not really take any sort of interruption to my attacks. It really is fantastic. As far as our talismans go, we have a couple different options. We can use the hammer talisman when we're going up against lots of knights with shields. That's going to increase the stamina damage that they take when they're blocking. The curved sword talisman, which is going to increase our block counter damage, which is great. We're going to be using this shield quite a lot. We have the green turtle talisman to increase our stamina regeneration speed. That's always a no-brainer, can pretty much be used in any build. The Dragon Crest Shield Talisman, which is really the only thing that we kind of have to go a little bit out of our way for. That's going to increase our defense. As far as like incantations that we're going to use for the early game, just different buffs for different situations. Cure Poison, heal up a little bit, Magic Fortification. As we progress into the mid-game, we will start to use some of the kind of more powerful faith-based buffs and stuff. But in the meantime, we're rocking with that. For our physic, we're going to be using the Crimson Burst to get that health regen, and then the Strength Knot to increase our strength-based damage. When you're going up against undead enemies, you're going to want to switch out Endure for Sacred Blade. Undead enemies are extremely weak to holy damage. It's just going to absolutely annihilate them. But it really is coming down to Endure, because it just will allow you to just not only tank that damage from enemies, but just remain unfazed by their attacks. Not only is it available at the start of the game, not only does it increase your poise, not only does it decrease the damage, but it costs next to nothing to use. It's like it's inconsequential, the amount of FP that you're going to use. So it really just is like an easy mode for the game. It kind of feels like you're cheating, and it's just absolutely fantastic. It's so much fun, and we're pretty much going to be using this for a good chunk of the game. If you fully clear out Limgrave and Weeping Peninsula, by the time you get to Liurnia, you should be at or around level 50. And what do I mean by fully clearing those areas? Pretty much doing all the content that those regions have to offer, all the optional content, like caves and catacombs, optional bosses, the lesser dungeons and stuff like that. So by the time you do all that, you will be close to level 50 and you will be ready to tackle Liurnia. So it's just a super easy build to set up, requires next to nothing, to actually do. You don't have to do any crazy things, go to late game areas to get what you need. this just makes it a very, very beginner-friendly build. It allows you to kind of just turn your brain off when you're going up against some of these bosses, because you won't actually have to dodge their attacks. If you just use Endure just as their attack is about to hit you, you're going to get a solid 2 seconds of pretty much invulnerability. Only the strongest attacks will knock you out. Basic attacks from enemies aren't going to do as much damage. They won't be able to knock you or interrupt you, and the same thing will go with a good chunk of the boss's attacks as well. So kind of just allows you to turn your brain off and just R1 away, R2, whichever you want to use. It's a lot of fun, and it just feels like breaking the game for a bit. How effective will this be in the mid-game and late game? I don't know. This is kind of the first time that I'm really using Endure in build and kind of focusing the build around it. But for the early game areas, yeah, it's incredibly strong, and it's just going to allow you to steamroll those initial hours of the game. When I usually make a new character, when I do a new build or whatever the case is, no matter how many times I play the game, no matter how many new characters I make, I still fully clear everything, and it usually takes me about 7 to 8 hours to do all of Limgrave and the Weeping Peninsula, doing everything that those areas have to offer. And yeah, I usually will be around level 50 by the time I'm finished with that, and Endure just allowed me to just completely steamroll these areas. So if you're new to the game, you want something that's very beginner friendly, consider trying out this build, and if you do, let me know in the comments how it works out for you. Everything is just found in those initial hours of, not even hours, the initial like 30 minutes. You can get the knight set, you can get the mace, you can get Endure, you can get everything that you need to get started and just go to town on these bosses and absolutely destroy them. But that's the build, guys. That's the early game showcase. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like and a sub. Really helps me out. Till the next one, stay locked to the channel. We'll definitely be trying to do some DLC builds once we get everything set up, but it's going to take quite a bit. I have so many characters that I wanted to try to bring into the DLC, so we'll see which ones will make it to the next one. Peace out, guys.